Hey, LawNext listeners. For today's episode, let me start with a piece of advice I don't usually give. If you have the option right now to switch from the audio to the video version of this episode, do it. We're going to be talking about vibe coding, and you're going to want to see what my guests are showing today, not just hear them describe it. You can find the video version on YouTube. Just search for LawNext. Those guests are Damien Riehl and Michael Bommarito. By day, Damien works on AI products at Clio, and Mike is CEO of 273 Ventures, a company that provides AI strategy and services for law firms and legal professionals. But outside their day jobs, they are also the founders of the ALEA Institute, the Institute for the Advancement of Legal and Ethical AI, where a central focus of theirs is the FOLIO Project, which is seeking to develop and maintain open legal standards and a comprehensive ontology to enable different legal systems to communicate with each other. FOLIO is an outgrowth of something you might have heard of, the SALI Alliance, whose ontology was largely developed by Damien. So what does any of this have to do with vibe coding? Well, in connection with their FOLIO project, Damien and Mike have been building an array of tools for tagging and enriching legal documents, for mapping law firm taxonomies, for browsing and editing legal ontologies, and more. And they've built all of it by vibe coding. Not over months, not with a team of developers, but on their own, often in a single weekend using AI coding tools. When Damien first showed me what he and Mike were developing, I thought, it's not enough for me to just write about this or even to just talk about it. It really has to be seen in action. So I asked Damien and Mike to come on LawNext and share their screens and walk us through what they've been building and show us what vibe coding really looks like in action when it's applied to serious legal technology problems. So again, if you can, I suggest video for this episode. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and this is LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to all of that, please take this moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Lawyers should be lawyering. That's why tens of thousands of successful lawyers use Practice Panther to manage their firms. The all-in-one solution that helps firms of all sizes streamline their workflows, easily track time, manage documents, streamline client intake, and process online payments without ever leaving the platform. Learn more about what Practice Panther has to offer at practicepanther.com. Now let's get to today's conversation. Mike and Damien, welcome to LawNext.
Yes. Thanks. Really good to be here. Yeah. And good to see you after being in person in Chicago. If it's Tuesday, it must be Cleveland, seeing Bob Ambrogi. So last week was Cleveland with Chicago.
Yeah, more like where's Damien this week? Where's Waldo this week? I don't know.
That's right. I need the hat.
World traveler. I introduced you at Tech Show as somebody who's worked for 3 different companies in 3 years, all while having the same job and traveling the world. So and having all sorts of sidelines, which is more what we're going to be talking about today. So
yeah, made up job titles for made up jobs. You could add that.
Yeah. So the genesis for this call is actually ABA Tech Show last week, where I ran into Damien, and Damien started showing me a bunch of cool stuff that he's been vibe coding, essentially. And I thought, it's not enough to talk about this. You really have to see it. Not enough for me to write about it. You really have to see it. So I said, why don't we just hop on a recording next week and walk through some of this stuff? And Mike Bommarito, who's here, wasn't at that meeting, but is involved with Damien in a lot of the work that you're both doing together, all around FOLIO and building up this ontology project that you've been working on. So maybe by way of, before we get into the show and tell part of this, Damien, maybe you could just kind of kick it off by telling us a little bit about what is FOLIO, what are you working on here, what's the background here, what we're talking about?
Sure. So FOLIO, I've been working on legal data standards, starting with SALI back in 2020. So January of 2020, I started working with SALI, and we built it from 1,000 tags to 18,000 tags.
What is SALI?
SALI is a legal data standard. Yeah, SALI is a legal data standard being used by tiny companies like Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, iManage, NetDocuments, all the biggest law firms in the world, and all the biggest corporations like Microsoft. They're all using SALI as a legal data standard to make their data interoperable. That is to say, motion to dismiss and merger agreement and force majeure clause and also breach of contract. Those are all SALI tags that if you want to be able to push and pull data from Microsoft to their law firm, to their legal technology vendor, all of them can speak the same language to make that data interoperable. So anyway, I've been doing that since 2020 with SALI. In 2024, Mike and I said, hey, we could do a lot more than we have been able to do with SALI. So SALI is the MIT licensed, which means that you can fork SALI. So we did a fork under the MIT license to create what is now FOLIO. And now with FOLIO, we're just building both tools and also enriching the 18,000 things to do a lot more things. So we're going to show you some of the tools that we've been building, and we've been quite busy, and it's been quite fun with vibe coding to build those tools.
Okay, and all of this is under this ALEA Institute, is that right? And what's that?
That's right. The ALEA Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. In contrast, SALI is a 501c6. So that is, it's my understanding that is to be able to help the organizations flourish. But ALEA is a 501c3 where we really allow humanity to flourish. And so as part of this work, we are taking the FOLIO tags and we're actually using them on, you might have heard that I was talking AI to the Vatican last November. And so the Vatican and a bunch of Catholic, my favorite vibe coding priest, whose name is Father John Dorazio out of Rome, he is now using FOLIO as a foundation for the Catholic data commons. So saying things like murder and theft, those are FOLIO tags. Those are also biblical concepts. And so he's using FOLIO tags, and we're expanding them for the Catholic use cases to be able to say, let's do that on all of the Thomas Aquinas text and all the Thomas More text, and going through the archive to tag them up. So anyway, so 501c3, ALEA nonprofit, is really to benefit humanity, not just the members.
And so you get this context of not just sort of statutory law or case law, but ethical law, religious law, whatever that would be.
Yeah. So SALI, even when I started, had deontic specifications saying, do you have a right to do something, or are you prohibited from doing something? Is there an exception to the rule? These all go back to Aristotle. So Aristotle has been doing this for decades, maybe more than decades. Excuse me. And so what we've always had that. And so now we are also on the Catholic side going through all of Thomas Aquinas, Thomas More, and really going back to what is ethical, because of course laws, statutory laws, relate to ethics and morals too. So there's a huge Venn diagram between the Catholic side and the legal side, and that's what FOLIO is all about.
And as a fun kind of addendum to that, so Dan Katz is also a part of of ALEA Institute, which was spun out of 273 Ventures when we spun our CLEM models, the copyright-free models that we trained from scratch. We spun out of 273 into ALEA. And Dan's PhD dissertation at one point, we tracked from U.S. common law back to British common law, back to Roman common law and like the Justinian Code, which incorporated some of these biblical concepts. And so it's more than just kind of a loose relation, right? There is actually a thread of the common law all the way from our British common law foundations back to Roman and through Roman, some of this biblical stuff. So it's fun even from a purely historical perspective, regardless of how you feel about framing law today in religious sense, but just from a purely historical perspective, it's there and it's very fun, and it's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down sometime if you're interested.
And you could take out Christian things and also Jewish things and also Islamic things. Everyone prohibits murder. Everyone prohibits theft. And so there's a huge Venn diagram of overlap.
Yeah. And probably not too much of that. I mean, both of you, I've interviewed both of you on podcasts before. Michael, I've also interviewed your wife on my podcast. I think possibly that was the first for me to have interviewed both the husband and wife team at different times.
Different interviews. The Describe team, have you done them?
I've not had them on my podcast. No, I see them and hang out with them all the time because they're here in the Boston area where I am. Just saw them last week too. They were in my Startup Alley last year at the Tech Show, but no, I've never interviewed them on my podcast. Good point. I need to do them. I'm sure Kara would greatly agree. So anyway, I think part of what was also interesting about what you're working on, Damien, in terms of what you were showing me last week, was how much of this you've been kind of vibe coding in developing. I was looking at I love reading the threads on the Reddit legal tech subreddit. And just a couple of days ago there was one posted saying that all vibe coded legal tech solutions are just toys that don't really do anything real that could actually be used by a lawyer in any real context. I'm guessing, Damien, that you might disagree with with that assertion. So I don't know. Do you guys want to just start to dive in and talk about some of the stuff you're working on here, or what do you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that people that say that should say that to the lawyers that are actually doing legal work today with their vibe coded tools. That is, there's a lot of legal quants you might have heard of, based out of Singapore, but these are a lot of lawyers that you could either complain on Reddit about this being toys, or you could actually build the thing and use it in your practice, and that's what the legal quants is doing. So I think that a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines, justifying their sitting on the sidelines for being prudent. But I think there's a real question as to whether they're bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Or maybe the wrong tool, right? I mean, like a hammer in the hands of a 6-year-old, speaking from firsthand experience, is obviously different than a hammer in the hands of an experienced tradesman. And a hammer and a box of nails is clearly easier to use than traditional fixtures and joinery methods, right? And so it's an easier tool to use if you know what you're doing, but there is still a threshold in terms of knowing when and how to use a tool, no matter how easy the tool is compared to what came before.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
And so maybe there's one thing to speak in the abstract and another to show the concrete. Should we show the concrete on the things that we've been vibe coding?
Yeah.
Cool. So as we start thinking about what Micah and I have been vibe coding, really the idea with the old world, and I'm going to talk a lot about old world versus new world. In the old world, when I worked for a large legal tech company, one of the big two that you could think about, what you would do is I would create a bunch of product requirement documents that I would have to give to the coders. I would spend, I'd create 100 pages saying the product needs to be doing these 100 pages worth of things, and then it would take the coders a year to do it. But right now, the product requirement document is the code. That is, even the best coders in the world are just creating that PRD. And then an hour and a half later, the software comes out the end. So it doesn't take a year. So really, that's what we've been doing. And we've been solving problems that I'd been trying to solve with SALI for years. And we've been vibe coding and doing some amazing things. So one of the problems with the old world is you just didn't really know what SALI was. And so here's now a really good description of what SALI does. That is both comprehensive, multilingual. So this is a really nice why folio. And we say why folio because you can annotate the lease agreement, and January 3rd is an effective date, and ACME is a lessor, and EMCA is a lessee. So now you can very easily see on this website why it is valuable to have these tags.
Is this something you wrote, or is this something that you generated?
Well, so Mike can answer that, but I would guess that it's a bit of both.
Yeah, it's a combination. I think this is one of the things Bob, you've maybe seen that we've been writing books using agentic harnesses too, right? Like taking Claude code and writing books. And I think, Thaler v. Perlmutter and a number of other cases in the pipeline are recently decided, provide some legal gloss to that. But these are joint works, to be honest, between a tool or multiple models and us as humans. And I can't honestly tell you where my contribution ended and the other side began anymore.
So. Yeah. And query whether anybody can. Behind me is my music studio. If I use a machine to jam and then I spend till 3 a.m. adding a bit of my human created thing, I'm supposed to tell the Copyright Office what parts were human created. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So this is the website that solves the problem. And then another problem that we had is that to be able to explore what SALI had, you had to go to a thing called Web Protege. Now, Web Protege is built by Stanford, and it's an amazing tool. But the problem is it requires a username and a password. And that is a non-starter for I'm in a law firm. I just want to see what SALI has, right? So then I have to sign up for an account, create a username, send that to Damien, and that's just friction that sucks, right? Yep. And then even when I'm there, I have to be able to go into, let's say, SALI. Let's go into SALI. Well, let's go to Folio. And then within Web Protege, I can search maybe, but the thing is, maybe I don't even know where to search, right? This is a very tiny thing. Even if I know how to search, I can search for patent. And then here are all the patenty things, 3 pages worth. And I'm like, I don't even know the context. Like what is a patent? It's weird, right? So we're solving all these problems with the thing that we're calling in Folio Explorer, where here is Folio Explorer, where here's a beautiful no login. I didn't have to send Damien my username and password. This is just an open website where I can be able to browse all the areas of law, asset types. I could be able to browse all the verbs. I advised someone. A judge decided something. What did they decide? They abrogated, accepted, affirmed. So now no password necessary. I can easily browse all the things. And then I can search very easily. I can say patent. And am I talking about patent law as an area of law? Am I talking about patent assets, utility patents? Am I talking about the patent registration document? Am I talking about the customs and patent appeals? Am I also talking about patent management as a legal use case? Or am I talking about patent infringement as an objective? So now each of these things has beautiful definitions. And most importantly, has this beautiful, unique identifier that is being used by Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, iManage, NetDocuments, Microsoft. Everyone is counting the thing that matters. So I can say motion to dismiss is always called a motion to dismiss, unless maybe you are in California, where it's called a demur, or in a time entry, where it's called an MTD, or some jurisdictions call it a motion to terminate. These are all synonyms for motion to dismiss, but there's only one unique identifier for the thing that is motion to dismiss. So all of these things, now I can copy this unique ID and use the SALI API to be able to interoperate between all of these. So that is a second problem we solved, to be able to take it from Web Protege and be able to actually let people browse and be able to find things more easily. That's thing number two. Thing number three is we've been really busy vibe coding. And the problem we're solving with the vibe coding is we have a lot of timekeeping, for example, that I want to be able to say, I want to tag up all the things. And in the old world, I want to be able to tag up not only the timekeeping, but I also want to tag up the motion to compel. I want to be able to say, what are the areas of law covered in this motion to compel? This order was ruled. What are the areas of law that were related here? A commercial services agreement. Was there a force majeure clause? There's all of these texts that wouldn't it be great to be able to tag these things up with SALI Folio tags? And so we built a thing called Folio Enrich. And so here is Folio Enrich, where I could be able to paste.
You built this using Claude, or?
I use Claude Code.
Go back a minute, Damien. I mean, tell a story, because 2 months ago, you were not using Claude Code, really, right?
That's right. 2 months ago, I was not. Mike Bommarito, my go-to consigliere of legal tech. I said, how do I get set up? And so he said, well, you probably want a standalone machine. And so buy a machine. I said, maybe a Windows machine. He said, no, not Windows. Use Linux, maybe Ubuntu. So I created this. I bought this machine right over here. It's my vibe coding machine, where I stripped out Windows and I beefed up the RAM. I put Linux Ubuntu on there. And then Mike gave me a script where I installed all of the things that are necessary, including Claude Code and a whole bunch of Python repos and a bunch of other things that now I have this massive, beefy Linux created super machine that I'm using to vibe code. And so what I did was essentially created a bunch of those product requirement documents. And I said, I want Folio Enrich to be able to take the text from all of the timekeeping. And I want to be able to take text from all of the contract documents and all of the litigation documents. I want to take every single legal work, and I want to be able to then take it and enrich it. And so really, this is something that wouldn't have been possible in November of 2025. So 4 months ago, it would not have been possible.
Would not have been possible to build it so quickly.
Well, so quickly, because I still would have had to throw things over the transom to Mike Bommarito.
Yeah.
And Mike's a busy dude. And so really, I now can self-serve, where I can say, this is everything I need as a vibe coder. So I can now take this timekeeping and I can click enrich. And what's happening in the background is it's going through and it's using LLM to say, reviewed is a SALI Folio tag. Complaint is a SALI Folio tag. Answer is a SALI Folio tag. Filed is a SALI Folio tag. Each one of these things has a beautiful, unique identifier that's right here. So you can see that it's going through a many-stage process, and each of these stages is running in parallel. One of these stages is that it's already finished, is to say, is reviewed literally the text from SALI Folio? And it is. Is answer a text from SALI Folio? And it is. And so it goes through, and stage one is to say, does the LLM, or does is it literally symbolic AI, the words? And then Stage 2 is we have separately a large language model go through all of this text. And it doesn't know about the symbolic AI. I just say, hey, pull out all the things that you think are legal text from complaint, answer, civil litigation. So it's doing that in parallel. And I'm actually going to show you, because it's this is the free and open source repo, the GitHub repo. So I actually lay out all of this. So you can see that stage 1 is ingesting the text, normalizing the text. And by the way, you can ingest it with a PDF or a Word document or plain text like I did. Stage here, I say, does it literally have the tags motion to dismiss? Is that part of the text? And then parallel, the large language model pulls out motion to dismiss from it. Then it says, give me all of the names. Give me all of the companies like Google. Give me all of the dollar amounts. Give me all of the dates. So it's doing that in parallel. And then we say, give me all the verbs. Did someone deny someone? Did someone analyze something? And then give me the document type. So it's doing all these things in parallel right now as we speak. And then what we do is we have a reconciliation phase to say, does the literal string match the large language model string? Because if both of them agree it's motion to dismiss, then I'm going to put the confidence score quite high. So here you can see the confidence score is 85%. And the confidence score for complaint is 95%. And that's because 3 of these sources agreed. That is the source that is the literal and the large language model all agreed that this is indeed a complaint. Then if we disagree, maybe this one and this one have different concepts, we resolve those conflicts, because a thing can be both things. So you could see attorney-client privilege is a thing, but then a client is a legal services buyer. So this is the idea of nested spans, that the client is a thing and attorney-client privilege is a thing. Oh, and by the way, an attorney is a lawyer. That is also a SALI FOLIO tag. So we can resolve the conflicts to say it's not or, it's both. And then we re-rank them into a confidence score. And then we have a judge, a large language model judge, say, now analyze this in the context of the entire sentence or in the context of the entire paragraph. And then after you finish that judging, give me the final output. So now it's gone through a 16-stage pass and it's tagged up all the things. And now I can be able to say, from this, give me all the documents mentioned, all the actors, all the objectives, all the legal use cases. And you can expand it to be able to say a complaint and an answer is a pleading. Discovery documents include interrogatories, privacy logs, etc. And you could also do that for, give me all the legal services use cases. Give me all of the people mentioned. Give me all the fact witnesses mentioned. So now I could take this and also all the triples. You could say, prepare to litigation, hold, letter, etc. I could say, what is the metadata? Administrative judges. Give me all, this doesn't have individuals, but give me all the verbs. And then I can export this as a JSON or an XML or a CSV. So I ask you, Bob Ambrogi, if this were to be released by Thomson Reuters or LexisNexis or one of your favorite consultancies, how long would it take you to build this tool? And I will tell you,
6 months, a year?
Maybe. And how many dollars?
A lot.
And I built this on a weekend with my Vibe coding machine. And that's question number 1. How much easier is it to build these things? Oh, and by the way, I could use Gemini, or I could use OpenAI, Anthropic, or I could use one of the local models. I could just be able to download Ollama, unplug from the internet, and do this work locally.
Yeah.
So question number 1, how hard would it be to build it? Question number 2, how expensive would it be to build it? And because it wasn't hard for me and it wasn't expensive, I've made it all free and open source.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, how many consultancies are charging a lot of money to a lot of firms to do this very thing with their timekeeping? Or to do that not just with timekeeping, but also their work product. Show me all the 7th Circuit cases where defendants and appellees and a circuit judge alleges excessive force claims or alleges qualified immunity. So you could do that for litigation documents. You could also do that for all of your motion types. You could also do that for all of your case assessment memoranda, attorney work product, underlying claim is a construction defect claim. You could also do that for all of your commercial leases. Tell me all the landlord, tenant. Give me all of the times where they talk about 30,000 square feet, which is an area. So now I could do that for all of my contracts. I could do that for all of my regulatory documents with the SEC. It knows that the SEC is an entity. It knows that administrative proceedings is an entity. Any legal document can now, merger agreement, a merger is an objective. An acquirer is a SALI folio tag. So really any legal document can now be tagged up. And the amazing thing with this is that with this, you can be able to get triples. Like Officer Taylor used a taser. So you could be able to say, hey, show me all of the cases where a taser was used by an officer. And because you have noun, verb, noun, you could be able to now tag these things up. And what this is called is neural symbolic AI. What you see as these triples is symbolic AI. This is a knowledge graph to be able to say noun, verb, noun. Mm-hmm. And this will 100% of the time be accurate. But a large language model might 50% of the time be accurate or 80% of the time be accurate.
Yeah.
So this neural symbolic combination to have neural net AI, large language models, combined with good old fashioned AI, knowledge graphs, will give you much more deterministic, therefore reliable things. So now I've annotated this entire Seventh Circuit brief, and I could be able to say all the times that James Taylor, who is a defendant, oh, and by the way, is also a person, used a taser. So this is FOLIO and Rich. Questions on this one?
Well, I guess one question is just to go back to your point about what does this mean for the consultants out there or companies out there that are spending a lot of time and money building similar types of products. I mean, to go back to the point Mike made earlier about giving his 6-year-old a hammer, I understand you were able to do this in a weekend, vibe coding this, but how accessible is this to others who don't have your sophisticated level of experience here?
I guess the question is, do they need to have my sophistication, or can they just stand on the shoulders of Mike and me? Because you can go to FOLIO and Rich and literally point Claude Code to this URL, saying, take this URL and then customize it to the thing I care about. Yeah. So really, you don't need to be as smart as Mike or me, and you just need to. And I'm not trying to boast, but I mean, you could literally say you could take this Folio resources that I'll give you the link to this Google Doc. Yeah. You could literally copy the thing I'm showing on my screen right now, put that into Claude Code, and say these are your tools. Go ahead and use these tools to build the thing that I want to do. And because these tools are all free and open source, Claude will be able to do that.
Yeah. And maybe more directly, because I think this is a good segue. You see the MCP note, the MCP bullet list there. Yeah. I mean, we did explicitly consider the idea that with everybody Claude coding or codexing or Geminiing or whatever open clawing somebody's doing, MCP has become the lingua franca of many of these systems, including places like iManage, right? I know MCP is no longer a kind of a fringe technology. And so we built everything or much of what you saw there on the screen into MCP tools or resources that any MCP compatible system can utilize. Folio and Rich and Folio Mapper have some other stuff from a user experience perspective. And there's some kind of specific processes like the neurosymbolic approach that Damien has built very explicitly into Folio and Rich, for example. But to Damien's point, I mean, you can literally run one line or copy paste the Folio MCP kind of connector API into your Claude Cowork or Claude Code or whatever, and get access to all of these tools in the ontology underneath the hood. I have an example, Damien. I don't know if you have an example too. We could screen share like a Claude Code session, since I know that's been hot lately, is to just kind of live stream Claude Code. But
can we use it? Maybe we could do that as a finale. Sure. Bob, I think that there's let's maybe march down this list to we haven't seen Mapper yet. We haven't seen OntoKit, and then Mike, should we do that as a finale?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think that you'll see that this MCP can actually do a lot of these things and just do it in one fell swoop. So it'll be good to give the listeners a way to be able to see. Enrich solves the problem that a lot of people have. And also Mapper solves a separate problem that we had. This is an actual taxonomy from a law firm. And they said, hey, when I was with SALI, they said, take this taxonomy from our law firm and translate it into what SALI has. So, for example, antitrust and competition is that this is the SALI. And then for agency, investigation, and/or enforcement, that's actually 4 different SALI folio tags. Because an agency is a regulator. And the service the lawyer provides is the regulatory service. And an enforcement investigation, that is different than an enforcement. So when a lot of law firms look at this, they say, wait, why would I have this kind of Frankenstein tag when I can break it into its component atoms and get rid of my molecules and be able to just atomically say, I want to find all the enforcements which are different than the investigations. So I spent about a weekend going through these 1,000 rows of things with my Damien SALI brain, and nobody knows SALI or FOLIO like me. So what I've done is I've just taken I like 17,000 of the 18,000 things, including all the definitions and all the things. So what I've done is I've downloaded my brain into a tool that is called a FOLIO Mapper. Tool. right. So this FOLIO Mapper tool is the way that I can be able to, as I find so many windows. Here's the FOLIO Mapper tool. So here's the FOLIO Mapper where I can now take. I'll go through to the beginning. Take my mergers and acquisitions, and it automatically maps that to mergers and acquisitions law, acquisitions practice. And I'll go to the mapper to show the before. So if I say resume, so here I could take complex commercial litigation, securities litigation. I can upload my Excel spreadsheet or my CSV file or my text file. I can upload my Excel spreadsheet. It'll then put it into something that looks like this. And then it'll parse it to be able to say, here are the children and et cetera, this way. And then I hit continue, and it says, hey dummy, you haven't configured your LLM. This is a feature, not a bug, where I'm going to go and pull in my API key, which I would ask you to. I think I could do it without you actually seeing it. But once I pull in my API key, it's going to be able to go through and be able to take. Here we go. So I'm going to use Gemini Flash. So I'm even going to be able to use the cheapest version of this. I'm going to test it to make sure it works, and now it works. And now I can, and you can see now the green is up here. I can now continue.
Show the key, right? It was
no,
it didn't show the key. That's right. That's right. So now it could say, okay, complex commercial litigation. It maps to litigation practice. And if I want to say commercial and trade law, then I do that too. And I could just keep going to say securities litigation includes securities and financial instruments law, et cetera. So let's go back here to an already baked one. Mergers and acquisitions is mergers and acquisitions law and acquisitions practice. And buy-side advisory is the advisory service, and financial advisor maybe, or maybe not. So I, as a user, could be able to say, well, investor advisory services may be another thing. And then strategic acquisitions, that's mergers and acquisitions law, et cetera. So now I could take all these things, and I can then be able to say, here's the mapping between mergers and acquisitions law and mergers and acquisitions documents, and an event, that's a merger and acquisition, and an objective, that's a merger and acquisition, and the service I as a lawyer provide, that is a merger and acquisition here. And here's all the ways that this relates to corporate law, transactional practice, et cetera. So now I could show this to my lawyer, who in 1985 came up with their crappy Frankenstein-y kind of taxonomy. And now I could be able to say, wouldn't it be great if we could then break out and tag all of these things and use something that's maybe used by tiny companies like Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, iManage, NetDocuments, and all of the things that, why can't we let them interoperate using these beautiful, unique identifiers? So this is a way you can map your maybe less than good taxonomy into a beautiful taxonomy and be able to then have the one-to-many mapping like God intended. So that is
once they've done that mapping, what does that let them do? I mean, if they have a knowledge management system or document management system or something like that, does that let it?
Yeah. So once you map it, you can export it either as an HTML. So here you can literally map this as an HTML and then send that HTML file to your lawyer as an email. And so I could do that, or I could send it as an Excel spreadsheet, or as a CSV file,
I think,
or as a Markdown file.
To connect two of the conversations going on in the field right now, obviously everyone is actually a little bit more serious about pricing models being extremely important. We are not going to make the transition, especially from the corporate side, right? The transition that's desired as buyers of legal services, unless we make progress on pricing. Because in the absence of a pricing model, well, we know what the alternative is. It's the status quo. This interoperability of data, the ability to map from historical unstructured information to structured and critically structured and interoperable information, is what is going to allow us to build pricing models, whether it's within a firm across years or decades of different practice area, or across multiple firms, or across multiple corporates who all have data that can be aggregated, or across both sides in some circumstances where it's already happening. And so pricing things requires structured, consistent knowledge management. And that's what this is. What Damien is showing you here is honestly, and it may seem a step or two removed until you understand the connection, but this is how we get to the future of a post-billable model, or at least some things being post-billable hour.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Cool. So I know that we don't have all the time. We've only gone through 2 of them. Can we go through number 3 and then we show Mike do the pièce de résistance?
Sure. I mean, I don't know, however you want to do it. I can go
awesome.
20 minutes or so if you want.
Cool. So another problem that we had, that we solved through vibe coding is to, if I, as a SALI person, wanted to be able to say, hey, asset type, and if I want to say, crypto or something like that, how do I be able to say that, this goodwill should have this kind of translation? If in the old world, I would have to say, Damien's an idiot, this should be this. And then that would get an email to everybody and everybody say, yeah, Damien is an idiot, it should be this. And I'll say, cool, maybe should I do this? And this is just an inefficient way to be able to do changes. So when I was in Rome, I connected with my like-minded Roman vibe coding priest, and we created a thing called OntoKit. And this is an OntoKit. The problem we were solving for the Roman folks is that they have a bunch of parishes and dioceses and archdioceses and the Vatican, all of whom have their ontology that they need to change. And it turns out that that's something that we at Folio want to do too. So wouldn't it be great if I could be able to go into, and I'll cancel out of this, I could be able to browse all of the things. So if I want to be able to browse a service that is the litigation service, where I want to be able to say, I want to be able to, in the trial court, pre-trial, do discovery, and I want to take an expert deposition or a corporate representative. I can browse this thing. And then I, as a user, say, hey, corporate representative practice, a lot of people call that a 30B6 deposition. So wouldn't it be great if I could edit this and then say a synonym of this is 30B6 deposition? Mm-hmm. And then wouldn't it be cool if as soon as I go to a next one, you can see that it's now saved that as a draft. And what's happened in the back end is I, as a user, don't know it, but it's actually created a branch in GitHub to be able to say that this is, we'll say Bob is doing this. This is Bob's suggested change. And then you can go through and change a whole bunch of other things and be able to add these comments. Say, I think we should do this, that, or the other thing, or add another definition and do that here. And now all of your changes are in the back end using GitHub. So it's abstracted away from you. You don't even know it. And now what will happen is if you stop making these edits for, say, 30 minutes, that creates what's called a pull request to be able to say to Mike and me, hey, these are some changes that were made to corporate representative and deposition posture. And then we push it to the entire world as suggested changes. So this is a way you can crowdsource an ontology. Crowdsource in a way that we were never able to do with SALI, but now we're able to do with OntoKit on both the Folio side and what the Vatican is able to do on their side too. So this is a way that we're collaborating with Father John Dorazio. I was just WhatsApping with him a bit ago, and we had a PR party yesterday, and we're going to have another PR party on Good Friday tomorrow. So we're just going to keep building, and because it's free and open source, anybody could be able to build this too.
Yeah.
So any questions on OntoKit?
Little Wikipedia sort of thing for ontology.
Yeah, that's right. That's maybe the nerdiest sentence I've ever heard come out of your mouth. Cool. So that's OntoKit, which is going to solve a lot of problems for us. Mike, do you want to show how MCP fits into this?
Yeah. So, I think if there's one thing that is hot right now, it's Claude Code or vibe coding for the practice of law, even to some degree. And I know many people have been talking about what you can do and tools that you can use. So this is our contribution to that conversation. We have built, as Damien showed you a minute ago, a bunch of MCP tools. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a court listener case, and I'm going to grab a complaint, one of my favorites, a docket that I have watched for a while here.
You're going to share, you're not sharing yet.
Yep. I am trying to, but...
Yeah, and while he's dancing, shout out to Mike Listener, who runs Court Listener, and the Free Law Project, who he's doing God's work to make a lot of the law free.
Exactly.
Yep. He is.
Beat me to it. So here is the Kadri v. Meta case, which I think we've all seen or heard of, the Meta case about copyright in their model training. And here is a Claude Code session with our MCP tools and skills turned on. So you can see there's a bunch of folio stuff here. And what I'm going to do is just take one of the skills, the identify objective skill, and I'm going to paste in the URL to the court listener PDF.
An objective is a cause of action, or an objective is a force majeure clause. So an objective is something that I, as a lawyer, either argue in litigation or negotiate in transactions.
Yep. And so what you're seeing is, Claude, as many of you have seen, Claude is able to go take a URL or some object or resource and fetch it. And that could obviously be something over the internet, like a court listener complaint in this case. It could be an internal resource, like something in your SharePoint or in your iManage or NetDocs environments. Just depends on what you have turned on. And then Claude will do what Claude does, which is figure out how to accomplish the objective. In this case, we've given it, like I said, a number of MCP tools, resources related to Folio, and then a number of skills. And it is currently trying to figure out how to classify this objective, which is, as Damien had kind of alluded to earlier, one of these kind of holy grails in knowledge management, especially around litigation, right? I want to find every matter in which this particular client or clients in this industry in our firm have faced, as a defendant, this cause of action. That was kind of like the dream of Foundation and some of these other systems at one point in the past. And I think it's a dream and a holy grail that's almost like trivially easily here. So you see in the span of, I don't know what that was, 30 to 60 seconds, doing nothing other than using the skills and the MCP tools built in, all of which are free and open source, like Damien said a couple times. And it is spitting out here all of the objectives, including the folio standards and IDs with descriptions. Wyatt.
So this is helpful not just to be able to say, show me all of the times things like mine, because I have a new case that is like this. So finding things like mine, that's use case number one. But Mike mentioned it earlier, pricing. How much do these types of things cost with this caveat? And every time a lawyer says, well, it depends, whatever comes out of their mouth, I say depends on what? And whatever comes out of their mouth, I add it to SALI and FOLIO. And so really this is counting all of the it depends that will really push the pricing up or down. So you need this well-structured tag data to say, show me all the unfair competition claims that we've done in the Northern District of California. And how does that push the number up or down?
So you can see it's interacting with my security boundaries in my Claude environment, which is a whole other topic on how to securely use Claude Code. I didn't intend to show that, but I guess that's a good sign. Anybody watching, yes, this is a properly sandboxed and secure environment. But yeah, if you said this was 30 to 60 seconds, and whether you're in a subscription model of Claude or whether you're using a totally different tool, whether you're paying for tokens, whether you have your own GPU, these tools allow you to actually imagine going through all of the documents in your DMS, going through all of the matters that you as a corporate have been party to, and actually having standardized, interoperable data for all of the different branches of Folio, which sounds ridiculous to say because, with Damien, when you and I first met and first started talking about what was in SALI, I think I was at Elevate and you were starting your kind of role as an evangelist there. And some of this stuff at that moment in time, we would kind of talk about as if it was the pipe dream, like a holy grail that we all wanted to work towards, but we all knew in our hearts was impossible. And that's not true anymore, right? It's like for a couple $100 in tokens, you can go through 100,000 documents in a DMS overnight while you're sleeping and have rich interoperable data. Just like it's so easy, like this.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Damien and Mike are going to show us something that flips the script a little bit, moving from tools that help you organize the law to a project that tackles the other half of what lawyers do, which is marshal the facts. Stay with us. But first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. As an attorney, you know it is crucial to prioritize your client's needs. Practice Panther offers a comprehensive solution that automates internal processes and handles administrative tasks, allowing you to dedicate more time to nurturing stronger client relationships. With robust features like case management, automated billing, and client portals, Practice Panther prepares you with everything necessary to focus on serving your clients effectively. Tens of thousands of law firms already trust Practice Panther to manage their practices. Discover the benefits for yourself at practicepanther.com. Welcome back to LawNext. Before the break, Damien and Mike walked us through a suite of tools they've been vibe coding for working with legal data, tagging documents, mapping taxonomies, editing ontologies. Now they're going to show us something different. A project called Open Gloss that takes on the facts side of the equation. 150,000 concepts built in a weekend for under $1,000. Let's pick it back up there.
Yep, I would say yes, and there's everything that we've been talking about is the law, and the practice of law is combining facts, that is my client's facts, to the law. And so maybe we could close to be able to think through the really awesome thing that Mike Bommarito did with his Mike Bommarito hat. It's called Open Gloss. So on this resources page, which again, we'll give you a link so you can give listeners the link, you could be able to say the folio has all the law, including motion to dismiss and including murder. And here's all the tooling with the GitHub repos. And then at the bottom of this document is all the facts. So you could be able to say that this is essentially an encyclopedia, but where Encyclopedia Britannica only has 40,000 entries, Bommarito created 150,000 entries. So this is about 3 times the Encyclopedia Britannica.
And these aren't just legal terms. These are fact.
These are facts.
Concepts.
So like murder, that's right. Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being. So it has definitions. It's got an excellent encyclopedia entry. It's got different senses because you can murder a person, but you could also talk a murder of crows, or a movie director murdered the scene. These are different senses that all involve murder. And you could say the synonym of murder is homicide or killing or slaying. This is all the same concept. And there are children like first degree murder or premeditated murder. And then murder is a type of crime. So this is parentage. And then we have edges between the nodes. You could say, what is murder related to? Does it come from the Latin or the Greek or the French? And then give me an example of each sense in a sentence. So let's do this for murder. So you could see that murder, you can murder someone or commit a murder. Here's an encyclopedia entry for murder, like a Wikipedia article. And then you could be able to say, sense number 1 is killing a human being. A synonym of that is homicide, killing, or slaying. It is a type of crime. It is a type of felony. And you could do first degree, second degree, or premeditated murder. And here's an example used in a sentence. And then use number 2 is a group of crows as a collective noun. Use number 3 is to use something in a manner that ruins it, like a performance or a text. So you ruined, destroyed, or mangled that scene. So how long, and Mike Bommarito, I'm going to toot his horn for a second. He did this for murder. He also did it for crime, and then for fraud, and then for cheating, and then for trickery and guile. And he just marched through all this until he did 150,000 of these things, all with this beautiful, unique identifier. And so if I search for knife, for example, a knife is a fact that you commit murder with. And a knife is a blade or a cutting tool or a slicing knife. It's the antonym is a blunt instrument or a dull blade. So I want to be able to say, show me all the murders that involve knives, take Folio and Rich that we did, and slap this unique identifier. And now you have the facts plus the law in Folio. And now everything a lawyer does is applying your client's facts to the law. And what this is essentially 150,000 facts. So this is, and by the way, how long would it, I'm asking Bob Ambrosi, how long do you think it took Mike Bommarito to do this? And how many dollars do you think it took to do this?
10 years and $5 million.
Go ahead, Mike.
It was a weekend and under $1,000 in tokens.
That's amazing.
So Mike Bommarito recreated Wikipedia in a weekend for less than 1,000 tokens. And now it's all free and open source. You can download it in GitHub, or you can go to Hugging Face and be able to take the 1.28 gigabyte file that is the output and run it locally on your own machine, unplug from the internet, and tag up all of the facts, or go to Folio Enrich, unplug from the internet, and then tag up all of the other things, all of the law, whether it be excessive force claims, etc.
Unplug from the internet also potentially meaning the same thing as in a controlled environment that satisfies privilege requirements, for example.
Right.
That's right. That's right. So really, this is the grand universal theory of the law. So you want to say, what is an excessive force claim? We've been collecting that an excessive force claim is related to an unreasonable search and seizure claim, related to the Fourth Amendment, under the constitutional claims that relate to governmental tort liability, which is a civil claim, which is related to a litigation objective. So for years, since 2020, for 6 years now, I've been creating this kind of graph. And this is what's called a knowledge graph, that a large language model can use this knowledge graph, that is MCP, that Mike Bommarito created, can be able to say, hey, I'm going to look for governmental tort liability. It can use that neural net AI to do the symbolic AI, to say, oh, governmental tort liability is related directly to excessive force claim. Maybe I want to do that excessive force claim. So this is the grand universal theory of how the law fits together, both the law on this side and the facts on the OpenGloss side. So what if you could put both those together? And that's really what we've done.
So, I mean, we talked before about billing, we've talked about knowledge management, those kinds of things, but what about just legal research? What are the implications of this for how we do legal research?
Yeah, so it turns out that an opinion, you could do a motion to dismiss for your law firm, or you could do the motion to dismiss in the docket alarm data that we have. You could do an order confirming the second amended joint plan of reorganization in the bankruptcy court in your law firm, or you could do it for docket alarm data. You could be able to do, the Ninth Circuit case, or I think it was the Seventh Circuit case here. You could do that for the, here it is. So this is a Seventh Circuit case. You could do that for a law firm, or you could do it for legal research. So really, this has huge implications for legal research. And I would say that, taking off my ALEA FOLIO hat and putting on my Clio hat, stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought Alito just asked, are we just going to give Claude the ability to make the decisions in the cases anyway? So I think you should just ask Claude if you take Alito's thread.
All right. We'll ask Claude. But I mean, it's what am I trying to say? Awe-inspiring, dumbfounding, something like that. It's Damien, you do work for a legal tech company, and I think one of the questions is kind of look at what you've been able to build here within a specific, sort of a context with a purpose in mind. But what are the sort of the broader implications of all this for how legal tech gets developed and built and deployed going forward? What's the future start to look like in this world of vibe coding?
Yeah, so Mark Andreessen, who created the web browser, essentially, he has Andreessen Horowitz now, and he said that historically you've had a triangle for software development where you had a developer, you had a product manager, and you had a designer. And he said now with vibe coding, every product manager thinks they can be a developer and a designer. And the developer thinks they could be a product owner and a designer. And he said they're kind of all right. They're all correct. And so the real question is now, can Damien Riehl and Mike Bommarito, I'm a product guy, maybe can I just be able to build at the speed of thought? And maybe the people that are going to win this game are not the people that have the most developers, but the people that have the most subject matter expertise. I litigated for about 15 years. So I know exactly what the best ideas, then take those ideas and put them into a PRD, a product requirement document, or just jam with Claude Code and say, hey, Claude Code, ask me all the questions of the things that you want. Give me all the triples you want. Give me all the metadata you want. And you can essentially Now subject matter experts will rule the roost. You don't need that developer anymore. And so I would say that's true for law firms. It's true for in-house law departments, also true for legal tech companies. That is a subject matter expert plus a developer maybe can move faster and maybe around the edges make it more secure or something like that. But I would say that vibe coding for product people like me just unleashes me and unleashes every lawyer that is technically savvy or even not technically savvy to be able to build more.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think the only footnote, which is a recurring theme in our conversations over the years and decades, is there's still PACER, there's still state court gates, and unless and until, although knock on wood, back to Michael Listener, right? Unless and until those gates are removed, there will continue to be ceilings on what is possible. Ceilings that shouldn't exist, obviously, for 25 different reasons. But just practically speaking, that will, I think, increasingly be the issue is if I need precedent up to date from courts that are not easily accessed or publicly available, what do I do? That shouldn't be a problem, but it is.
So it's not what you can do with the data, is getting access to the data in the first place to do it with the data.
Yeah.
Yep. And right now, only 3 companies in the world have that.
Yeah.
And so let's do a recap. How long would it have taken you in the old world to build Enrich? How long would it have taken you in the old world to build Mapper, to be able to map things? How long would it have taken you in the old world to do OntoKit? It took me literally, I've done all of these things in the last month, and with $0, or I take that back, with $200 a month in the top Cloud Code subscription. I've been able to build all these things. And because it costs next to nothing to do it, we've made it all free and open source. So really, I think that every legal tech company listening to this, every law firm listening to this, every law department listening to this has to realize that this is a new world that I've just described. Because if all those things I just showed you took me a month, what's going to happen in the next year? And what does this enable you to be able to do?
And what does it mean for those companies? I mean, how many of the, if you're, if you can do it in a weekend, put it up open source, lots of other people are going to start doing things in a weekend, putting it up open source, maybe, or at least putting it up at lower cost. Yeah, go ahead.
Law firms need a person like Damien. Every law firm needs at least one Damien. That's why, whether that's draft and develop, finding the closest person internally, the person who's doing it nights and weekends anyway, empowering them, giving them resources, hiring somebody net new, hiring Damiens or whatever. But however you get there, the human capital mix at firms is going to change. And this is one of the ways that it has to change. The sooner you get a person who can start a flywheel of productization and internal product development, the better you will be situated, in particular as a firm, to navigate this transition. So
that works for large firms. It doesn't work for the solos and smalls of the world that aren't going to be able to afford a Damien.
I mean, wearing my commercial hat for a second, we are working with small and medium-sized firms, in particular some boutiques who maybe left a large firm because they have a book of business and wanted to productize or process infuse it, and their firm's chaos prevented them from doing so. So I actually think now is a great time to be a small and medium-sized firm with focus, because as Damien said, it takes a $200 a month subscription to build this kind of product that previously you would never have had access to. It doesn't exist in the market, or you might not have wanted to teach your trade secrets or your process to a third party anyway. You can have it all now, right? You can have it all for next to nothing. The only thing you need is a knowledge and understanding of how to use these tools.
Yeah. Earlier, I think at the outset of our conversation, Damien made an allusion to some of the consultants out there might want to be paying attention to this, but maybe there's like a new breed of consultants who are vibe coding consultants. Because again, I hear what you're saying about some smaller firms are going to be able to do this, but I'm sure Damien would want a salary of at least $25,000 or something, and not everybody could afford that if you're a solo or small firm, and so they are. Does that create a sort of a new generation of a different kind of a consultant out there, rather than teaching you how to integrate with time slips or something? They're going to be helping you build your own systems.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, giving people fish rather than teaching them to fish. I think that teaching to fish is going to be the way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Certainly, the cost that the market will bear will change. I'll say that much, right? So.
All right. Well, I know our time is up, but this was fascinating, and I really appreciate that you were able to jump on this call and walk us through what you were walking me through last week. It really demonstrates the power of not just the tools that you're building, but of this sort of new generation of vibe coding tools that could really change the profession.
Yeah. And thanks so much for having us on. I think that, for 6 years, people have said, yeah, SALI seems great in theory, but how do I actually implement it? I'm so happy that you're able to show everybody how we can now have the fruits of that 6 years of labor. And I would say stay tuned for what Mike and I are building, because we currently have 18,000 things. Mike also created a thing called FOLIO Generate, or Generative Folio, I think, to be able to fill in all the gaps that the 18,000 has, and to be able to say, what does EU law say about this, or what does Singapore law say about that? So really, we're stay tuned for what Folio is going to be doing.
All right, Mike, any last words from you?
No, what Damien said, and thank you as well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so by messaging us on LinkedIn or other social media, or by emailing me directly, mbrogi@gmail.com. If you're a fan of LawNext, please leave us a review. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. Hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.